So it's my great pleasure to be here in Beijing for day one of Cybos as we prepare for our Fuel the Future Roundtable with Bank of America. Over the course of today's conversation, I'll be speaking with Christian Stolker, Adrian Bloom and Winnie Chen as we go across the world with Bank of America to see how they're collaborating with their corporate clients to fuel the future. So in the complex environment whether we're now operating in, Christian, perhaps I may come to you first. What are some of the challenges that you see corporates facing at the moment?
Certainly. So let's think about the macro environment, right? So the world is going from a situation of expansionary, high inflation, high rates environment into a much more limited GDP growth around the world. So what we believe the corporates are going to be looking for is partnerships that allow them and to support them in looking for new revenue opportunities around the globe. So they're looking for partners that can accompany them around the globe wherever the opportunities are, number one. Number two, they'll continue looking for effective and efficient banking partners, right? So you want to get paid higher on liquidity and you want to have lower cost services wherever you go. And the third aspect is clearly around resilience, right? It's a more complex, difficult world. So you want to make sure you're partnering with a firm that provides a resilient infrastructure throughout the world at scale.
Amazing, you've kicked us off with some strong themes there. Winnie, I want to come to you. You are new to your role. I believe it's 1 month now. Tell me about what you've been seeing as you speak with corporate clients in the last month and some of their pain points.
1 month into the role, and then I spent a lot of time meeting with clients and also attending forums. And some of the key themes, especially in this part of the world, Asia Pacific, it's really around comprehending all the different types of the real-time payment rail that's happening in the region. And then, of course, the corporate treasurer also continue to look into the liquidity management of their entire APAC book and looking for, stronger management in terms of the foreign exchange positions. And of course, looking for different types of technology for them to help them to improve their efficiency as we now are going to, more of the on-the-go situation. Corporate treasurers, whether they can actually utilize different channel or different ways to actually approving things, instead of just in everything in the traditional ways. So a lot going on for the corporate treasurers happening in this region, and then we certainly would like to help them to go through this kind of different industry environments.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because unusually for someone from the UK, I started my career in Asia, and I think that Asian corporates are really driving some of the most kind of dynamic, innovative and technologically advanced solutions. Certainly when compared to corporates in America, I think there's such an amazing cross-pollination that can go on, and where people like yourselves can play such an amazing role, bringing the best of each region together. Amazing. Well, busy first month for you by the sounds of it. Adrian, you're based in Sydney. Tell us what you're seeing with corporates across APAC.
Thanks for the question. The role of a corporate treasurer has become much more broad in this complex environment. Corporates are managing treasury as a business. So within that, we see three key themes. The first one is around digitization. You need to we see them improving their efficiency, automating, getting rid of the friction, getting rid of the paper, to ensure that they are much more efficient in their business. The second thing, it has been a volatile environment. Being able to manage your liquidity is very important. We've seen our corporate clients holding a little bit more cash to manage that liquidity and really using our cash flow forecasting tool much more to be able to predict that liquidity going forward. The third thing is regulation. We've seen a big increase in regulation, and that's where we're really partnering with a local bank to be able to help you, particularly as regulations change, that you can manage your business appropriately. Those are the three key themes we've seen from treasurers.
Amazing. And Asia Pacific is by no means a monolith. It's a very diverse and nuanced part of the world. Are there any particular nuances to certain countries that you'd like to highlight here?
I think in the macro backdrop that we've had, we've seen some countries are in a rising rate environment and others are in a falling rate environment. So certainly being able to manage your liquidity with both of those two themes is important. And the second theme is really around the different regulation across Asia. being very cognizant of where you can make seamless payments, where you need to seek approvals in order to make those payments. Again, partnering with a bank that is local to be able to help you with that is really important.
Amazing, thank you. So now I want us to talk in more detail about payments, where certainly the pace of change is driving a lot of our conversations. Winnie, what are you seeing when it comes to the payment space and how that affects your corporate market?
Yes, the cross-border real-time payment development in APAC is certainly far advanced than the rest of the regions, for instance, in the US or somewhere in EMEA. And then the corporate treasurer in this part of the world, they have to, stay curious to understand what type of payment system actually fits their underlying client requirements best, right? And they need to really think about from the client experiences point of view. For instance, for real-time payment for corporate treasurer, if they are not facing consumer side of the client franchise, perhaps they would like to collect money on the instant manner, but not necessarily in terms of sending money on the real-time manner, right? So there's a lot of way to think about the payment landscape from a treasurer that would sit in this part of the world, because there will be a lot of investment dollar that coming into changing the way they do their, the payment business. And then also a lot of regulatory consideration, liquidity consideration that the corporate treasurer have to be very mindful about.
Amazing. You touched on some amazing points there. I think there's no one size fits all anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And certainly in the past, we've spoken at length with you guys around on-time payments, for example. So thank you very much for that there. So innovation is certainly driving a lot of the change in payments. What are you seeing in this space, Christian? And what are some of the things that corporates should be thinking of?
Yeah, look, I think there are a couple of trends. I would mention three in particular, right? One is what I call and what we all call the consumerization of payments. So corporate treasurers now really expect to have the same experience that they have as a retail client, right? So they want to do an FX, they want to do cash pooling or payments at their fingertips in real time, right? So this is the same experience that they would be expecting as a normal consumer, where everything is digitized already. So I think that's number one. Number two, I would say, is the advent of 24/7 availability. And as Winnie said, that doesn't mean real time, it means at the right time. So, and this is sometimes driven by regulation in some of the venues, and in other parts it's driven by the end consumer of those businesses that the treasurers run, what they need and how they're evolving, right? And the third trend, I would say, is the enrichment of payment data and money in general with data and information. So with the advent of ISO implementation around the world, the message and the information that goes along with the payment becomes so much more rich. And people and companies will want to monetize that into new services, into new expectations with their clients, right? So I think those are some of the changes that are coming up on us. Now, what that means for treasurers, I think number one, they really need to understand what business they are in and what their end consumers really need, right? You need to keep close to your client, to the end client, and then devise the services for them particularly, right? That's number one. Number two, I think experimentation with new technology is important. You can't align yourself with all innovation that's out there. You have to choose and pick and choose. But I think you need to start to experiment with some of the newer technologies. And then thirdly, you have to choose the right banking partner and the right technology partner to be, to be partnering with for the future, because those will drive your destiny.
Yeah, I think you made some good points there. I mean, often when we speak with corporates, it's the kind of the so what factor is what I call it. What does this mean for me in reality? What will this actually change for my business? As I mentioned at the outset, with innovation and with rapid change comes also an element of risk that increases in some cases. What do you see as the main risk in the payment space at the moment, and how do we work to mitigate that?
So that's a very interesting question, Sophie. We just had, as part of Cybos, we had an advisory board that we hosted here with a number of our key bank clients. Real-time payments and faster payments was obviously a key theme of that event. Two of the things that came out of that, first is safety. The challenge with the speed of payments is fraudsters can obviously take the money and it moves across the system much quicker. So that's a real challenge. And the second thing for corporate treasurers is liquidity. Winnie alluded to that previously. The money is obviously moving out faster. So you possibly need more liquidity to be able to cope with spikes in the event that business is growing.
Absolutely. And then Christian, I want to come back to you. Tell me a little bit about the work you're doing with fintechs in this space.
Yeah, so fintechs have been around for a while, right? I think the whole partnership and the ecosystem with fintechs and traditional banks has really evolved. I think many people call it today a combination of cooperation and competition, so co-opetition. I think fintechs fulfill three roles within the banking system. On one hand, they provide services to the industry, right? Think about early warning system, which is an alliance between banks that provides Zelle, right? The real-time payments in the United States, or other functionalities. Secondly, fintechs are very important clients of ours, right? So sometimes as they grow, they graduate to become fully regulated banks themselves, and then they are competitors, right? And thirdly, fintechs have become strong and good competitors of the industry, but I think they coexist in the ecosystem, and they really have helped traditional banks to become much more agile, faster and agile deployers of new technology, and much better in fulfilling our client promise ourselves. So I think it's a very good cooperative ecosystem, and they'll be that way in the future as well. It will continue that way.
Amazing. And back to Adrian's point around the mitigation of risk. How can corporates balance the benefits with the risks of using third parties?
I just think they need to, again, this goes back to my earlier point, you need to experiment. You need to experiment with partnerships and find different partnerships models across the industry, and then risk assess across these partnerships and go forward.
Fantastic. So Adrian, you alluded to the regulatory environment in APAC. Could you outline the kind of regulatory hurdles that businesses are facing and the way that you partner with them to overcome these challenges?
Sure. So we always say Asia is not one country.
No, absolutely not.
So across Asia, you have multiple banking regulations, multiple regulations around consumer protection, around how you store your data, around how payments can be made. So that is a challenge for a corporate treasurer, and one that they need to mitigate. So partnering with a bank that is in each of those locations is a key mitigant to be able to really understand how do you manage in each of those locations, and to get advice and guidance to be able to manage their businesses.
And what about currency controls or challenges opening accounts?
Again, the answer is actually the same. You need to work with not only a global bank that has access to liquidity across the globe, but also someone that really understands what are the local regulations, and someone that is in country to be able to help you deliver for your business.
Okay, fantastic. And then Winnie, I want to come to you now. Are there any points you'd like to add here, for example, around the context of geopolitics?
I'm sure nowadays all the corporate treasurers, right, they have been weathering, the macro, economic situation. So, and of course, the corporate treasurers are continue to look for better ways of managing their cost perspective, better way of looking into their capital structure, liquidity management, and also, of course, to manage all the geopolitical type of consideration to make sure their business can continue running at the low cost level.
And I'm sure that fits with themes that I'm seeing in all of our conversation around your role as advisor to the corporates, particularly Asian corporates coming outwards, Western corporates coming inwards, and so on. Christian, I want to come to you now. I think something that I've seen evolve with corporates is a focus on attracting talent, on retaining talent, and on their own development. What are you seeing in this space, and what's some advice you could give, perhaps from the perspective of an FI, and then for your corporate client base?
Yeah, look, I think the whole industry is evolving very rapidly, right? We are now in a scenario where innovation is being driven into this industry, both on the banking side, but also on the corporate side, much faster. It is largely new technology now in the last 18 months with a very rapid advance of AI, for example. We have a changing global environment, and we have new consumers coming online. So consumer needs and demands are changing fundamentally as well. All of this with an increased complexity in the whole world. So I think that we have done an okay job, but we need to accelerate really the focus on talent retention and attraction into this industry. We simply need to develop and then advance the talent that will drive decision-making and change in this industry. And again, I think we have done an okay job, but there's a lot more to do in this space globally, both on the banking side and on the treasury side as well, right? So this is a joint challenge for both sides of the partnership.
Absolutely, and drawing on the thematics that you've all spoken about, I guess would be there's no one size that fits all, and so intellectual curiosity must drive all of our development, including the corporate audience, right? As you're looking at the geopolitical environment that you've mentioned, regulation, which you've mentioned, and retention of talent and development, as you've mentioned. It's never been more competitive, right, for either institutions or corporations to attract and retain talent. I'm going to ask also now if we could just summarize one major takeaway for the audience. So on the basis that it's going to be our corporate audience, can we think about one kind of intentional takeaway?
So I guess building on the themes that we've seen here in the 2 days that we've been here so far, really the key themes that our clients are looking for is around safety, it's around transparency, it's around certainty, so that they can go through to manage in what is now a very complex environment. And probably as a second theme, it's probably never been a more interesting time to be in this business because there is so much going on.
Absolutely. Winnie, what's your major takeaway for our audience?
I would say that, we all, like even the banking community or even the treasurers community, there's so much that we all can learn from each other and share with each other. And then forums like this, as I speak to some of the peer, friends managing their transaction banking business, either it could be just on the regional basis or it could be a global basis. Like these all form parts of the intellectual that we can actually bring to our clients who are the treasurer managing their own business, whether they are at the headquarter level or at the regional level. So like that's the key takeaway is that curiosity and then share the best practices in the industry.
Absolutely. Christian?
Look, I think if I bring it down to one sentence, I think it's a more complex operating environment which requires corporates to have the right partners and invest in resilience and be ready to change.
I think the only certain thing is that we must all develop resilience, right? Thank you so much.